My name's Third Son. I just released my debut album called 20 Days. The idea being to write, mix, master and release the whole thing within 20 days. And it was very hard. So day one, I was still quite optimistic about the whole thing, I think. I came up here quite early and then sort of just started jamming and then putting stuff on social media, which was part of the project, sort of documenting it online. And it all seemed to go quite smoothly. I made the track that then became the second track of the album, called Life Window. And it turned out really nicely. I think, I was sort of naively bopping around. I finished the day thinking, this will be all right. This will be fine. Day two was like much the same. I can't remember the track I made on day two. I always feel like the album takes the flow of how we pick the tracks because it's sort of so happy and bouncy and optimistic, and then it gets a bit darker and then it picks back up towards the end. The whole thing felt so long. It went so quickly, but felt so long because each day was like a significant event to me because there was so much like emotional energy going into everything. I'd already been making music on day 5, but I was getting a bit frustrated because I think I was like just posting loads of stuff, and I think I then listened to the Joe Wilson vocals from Solomon Gray, and then I was like a bit more relaxed. I was like, oh, this is really good. Fits the track so well, and I think I was a bit more relaxed after that. And certainly talking to my management, who were really supportive and just basically saying, chill out on the social media stuff. That's the side bit. But I think following day 5, something changed, and I think it was my outlook on the whole project and realizing, the social stuff is secondary for sure. I'd posted something online. I just received some vocals, guess who? And someone suggested Car in the comments, and then I suggested that to my management, and they said, okay, well, give me 10 minutes, I'll ping off an email, and lo and behold, she came back and was into the project. But I think a lot of inspiration for the album came from the fans listening as we went through. Certainly with vocalists, like suggesting Car was brilliant, I think. And like that vocal worked so well with that track. I mean, when I made the track, I thought, oh, this is a finished thing, and it's a perfect example of receiving a vocal and then not being able to imagine the track without the vocal afterwards. I can't imagine that not being the way it is now.
Fire to the other side. Take the power. I'm searching. Circuits in the night.
I was asking a lot of questions on Instagram. At first they seemed kind of a bit general, and I was asking myself, am I actually doing anything that's contributing to the album? Am I actually asking questions that are relevant? Does it just feel like a game? But ultimately, the answers I got back were really interesting, and I think, for example, I was playing a track and there was no beat, and I sort of asked, should I finish this beatless or with some sort of backing rhythm? And the answer came back as, no, just do it ambient. And that sort of helped, in my mind, shape the album a little bit in making something that's not just clubby stuff. I was actually quite surprised with that, which was a pleasant surprise. Usually I'll write pretty quickly. My process is usually quite quick. I like to work with throwing ideas down, jamming, and then ultimately just recording it and refining it, chopping it up. So this kind of project, I did feel like it was possible, but I wasn't sure if it was actually going to be good. And that was sort of the experiment. I maybe release a quarter of, or a third of what I make. So there was this feeling of, okay, so if I'm going to do it, maybe there'll be a third of the stuff that I'm actually really excited about. But actually the result was the opposite to what I expected. But I think there's something to be said for throwing yourself into something completely. I think I wrote 18 tracks altogether, but ultimately 11 tracks felt right, and it felt that the flow was perfect. Yeah, I think it's better to, when it comes to making an album, telling a story rather than just releasing, you know, the real strong bangers. Part of the way I wanted to make this record was do it really honestly and authentically, and I think looking back on where I've come from really helped with that, in terms of coming through university and going to club nights and finding house music and working with other artists and working with different styles, and all of these things coming together and coalescing to make something that's, I think, is quite fresh and new, but also harks back to everything I've already done. And I think that's partly why the record comes out honestly, because I'm just vomiting all these ideas and memories up, basically, as I'm going day by day. I'm not really overthinking or even thinking about what I'm doing. I was just listening to old music that I'd done and loved, and sort of trying to, in my head, get a shape for how I wanted the album to work out. In terms of influences, just going back and listening to old James Holden stuff, cinema or disco, they've always really inspired me. For anyone starting out or wanting to go down this route, I would recommend just work really fucking hard. Like, work really hard and you have a chance. You really do. I firmly believe, and I think I have to believe, that if you want to do this, you can do it, but you just have to put the time in. And I think this album shows it in a roundabout way, because obviously it was only 20 days, but I put everything into it. Everything. I suppose that's a sort of ideal for life, really, without going too armchair psychology. The wine is fine. Someone who's become so important in the label aesthetic is my girlfriend, Sandra. She's really the brains behind all the artwork stuff. This project, we certainly wanted to do something more personal. Also, we wanted it to look quite unique and iconic in a way, sort of like you can see it online, but it feels like it's maybe something from 20 years ago that you would have seen before. Ultimately, we went out and we just went into the garden and had fun with it, and we tried lots of different materials and thought, oh, what would look good sort of between my face and the lens, and it just sort of became a bit of a joke, really, just sort of moulding my face over cling film and just seeing what funny shapes. And we were just laughing throughout the whole thing. And the stuff we used was the stuff that got the biggest laughs, really.
Compliance officers in Sydney are moving into a market garden on the
Oh yeah, there's a constant internal monologue of this is shit, for sure. For days and days, I was saying to my girlfriend Sandra, like, yeah, I'm making the album, but it's crap. For me, it always had to be good, so that was the main challenge. I felt like I could make the album, like the time wasn't such the issue of the amount of music, it was the quality, which is how I often get around stuff, by telling myself it's not good enough. And this time it worked out. Usually it doesn't, and you overthink things and you sort of get caught up in knots, but this time it seemed to work out, getting the people on board that we did early on, through press, through Abby, my press agent. She managed to get these magazines and blogs involved without any music existing in the first place. And And then that sort of made it a real thing as well. So when we started seeing these pieces come out, our third son's gonna write an album in 20 days. Oh, people know about this now, and now I actually have to do it, I have to commit. And certainly getting feedback of, oh, this is a really interesting idea, started to put wheels on it and make me more motivated as well. It's important to get feedback for the work you do. The initial feedback from the concept before I'd even started making the album was skepticism. There was, I think people felt, oh, that's going to be stressful. Just a whole spread of different thoughts there, which is perfect, I think. As long as people are sort of feeling something as opposed to indifference, then I think you're onto something. The final result I was really happy with. There was a lot of relief, but I think as well the quality that came out, I was kind of pleasantly surprised with.
I don't know how I got here because this patch is a fucking mess.
Okay. Would I do it again? Absolutely not. No. Would I do it again? I couldn't recommend it, basically. I couldn't recommend doing an album in 20 days.
Yeah.
How it came out ultimately, I'm really proud of it. I think we're all really proud of it. I hope it inspired people and there's motivation there for people to do something, to at least challenge themselves, should be the take-home message. In terms of future projects, I'd like to continue challenging myself and challenging what people expect of artists. Someone that I admire greatly is Matthew Herbert. I released on his label recently, Accidental Junior, and that was a real moment because he really is someone that I look up to. So yeah, in terms of like future projects, I think new challenges, new concepts, thinking up something that's not been done before. I know it's not easy. Maybe lock myself in a cage and hang off some landmark and make an album in, I don't know, 10 days? Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare, doesn't it?